Thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park, the championship meet, running now through Florida Derby weekend, March 31st.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning. Shake off the snow. Welcome to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning. Seth Merrow in the studio. Yesterday, didn't know when I stepped out of here whether I'd make it back in time today because they were predicting the first storm of the season, and it was varying between ominous and we don't know. Early in the week, they were kind of hedging on what the snowfall total would be, and then the last 24 hours, they seemed to keep upping it, and eventually it was 6 to 12. And maybe we'll get there, but this morning it's not in that area, but it's supposed to continue through maybe mid-afternoon and even a little lightly into early tonight, perhaps. So maybe we'll get there. But the totals at this point, when I left the house, I saw on television, Albany had 2. I'm up in the Ballston Spa area. Saratoga had 4 so far. And when I brushed off my car, it seemed like about 3 or 4. That said, if you're going out, take it easy. The roads, because it is still snowing, so the plows go by, but there's a little coating on the roads. And so, plan to spend a little extra time on the roads and take your time today because, again, the roads are certainly snowy and continuing to be snowed on. So I luckily, as soon as I got on the Northway, I was behind 3 plows and followed them all the way down. Speed was not a factor there, but certainly I felt plenty safe as they were sanding the road right in front of me and the big line of traffic behind them. But again, we were traveling fairly slowly, and that's probably the game plan for much of today. But we'd still love to have you down here if you'd like to come to the Clubhouse Racebook today. Don't forget, we're winding up the NFL season, but football Sundays continue. You can come down, watch all the football action and all the racing action here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Grab a little lunch at Fredella's and have a lot of fun. It seems like at this point, everybody is still running. So as far as the weather, it seems like that is working out well. I will note that yesterday in New York, the pick 6 was not hit. And so there is a carryover. There we go. Carryover of $29,000 into today's pick 6 in New York. So if you're a pick 6 player, keep that in mind for a little bit later on at Aqueduct. I'll be looking at Aqueduct and Gulfstream today. I also threw a little Oaklawn into my mix for this Sunday afternoon. So that'll be coming up a little bit later on, a couple hours away. Racing across some OTB Live coming up this afternoon. We are on Racing Across America here in the morning. And as usual, on a Sunday morning, we'll recap some of the stakes action. Also yesterday, the Eclipse finalists were announced. I had Mike McAdam on yesterday on Racing Across America, sports writer for the Daily Gazette, and also covers horse racing, obviously, all year long. But during Saratoga, that's a real concentration. He's in the press box most days up there. But he has a Eclipse ballot, as do I. And so we kind of compared our ballots and talked a little bit. And yesterday I was thinking the finalists were going to be announced on Monday. But no, we wound up the show at 11 o'clock yesterday. And at noon, the finalists were announced. So maybe we'll take a little look at the Eclipse finalists. It seems like Mike and I and our ballots matched up nicely with the finalists in most of the categories. So again, we'll hit on that a little bit later on as well. But let's kick things off and talk a little bit about the stakes action from yesterday. There was a couple of stakes in New York, some stakes down at Gulfstream. Oaklawn had the Pippin, and out in Southern California, some 3-year-olds. And 3-year-olds will kick things off with our discussion in New York. The Jerome, $150,000, ungraded, but these are 3-year-olds going the one-turn mile. And I like Drum Roll Please. Betting public really like Drum Roll Please. Drum Roll Please went off as the 3-5 favorite. And Javier Castellano on board gets it done. But I will say, as they turn into the stretch, Linda Rice has a nice little New York bred, an El Grande O, the 4-horse, and really gave the winner all he could ask for through much of the stretch. That's the Drum Roll Please, the favorite coming. But he had to make up some ground on El Grande O. Again, nice favorite. Now, subsequently, the margin turns out to be about 4 lengths when they separate themselves. But El Grande O is about 8 lengths ahead of the next horse. So again, second place finisher notable as a nice little New York bred, but the winner notable because the winner, and it's from Brad Cox, Al Gold and his Gold Square Racing. Broke the maiden 2 starts back right here at Aqueduct, then came back and ran third in the Remsen behind Dornoch. And off of that, those couple of efforts, again, went off as the 3-5 favorite yesterday and got it done. Had to close into a very slow pace, 24 and change, 49 and change, 114 and change. All of that said, the mile, 141.91, and it is notable that in the very next race, maidens went a little bit faster. All of that said, and I had pulled it up just now, an 80 buyer. So the buyer, not bad. The winner in that next race wound up to have an 82 buyer. So again, the maidens in the next race did it a little bit faster. Make it that what you will. And when I talked about the race yesterday, I wasn't quite convinced or sure we'd come out of this race with some Kentucky Derby contenders. But that said, again, El Grande O is going to be one of those New York breds that you're going to watch because they can go back and forth. Has had some success against Open Company at in the Skidmore up at Saratoga, ran second. That was an Open Company stake. Well beaten in the Champagne, but second yesterday in the Jerome. So Linda Rice and Company, and has been successful against New York breds in New York Bred Stakes Company. So Linda Rice and Barry Schwartz, nice little New York bred in El Grande O. And drum roll, please, again. Will the Derby be in the future? I don't know, but I would think, given what we've seen so far, a player on the 3-year-old stakes scene maybe picking their spots. And Brad Cox does do that nicely with some of his stakes runners where maybe these aren't the grade 1 players on the bench for our team, but we can kind of cleverly go around and pick some spots. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the game plan. We'll see. Still lightly raced, and I'm sure they'll give this one a test before they start picking their spots. But I do think, there's a decent little future ahead for him this year as a 3-year-old. Drum roll, please. Winner of the Jerome yesterday. And we'll see. Maybe he gets tested next time in the Withers. That comes up. It's a 1.125 grade 3 event on February 3rd. They didn't confirm anything next for drum roll, please, but we'll see. That certainly would have to be considered as a possibility. A little later on the card, Brad Cox sweeps the stakes races yesterday at Aqueduct. He gets it done with Comparative in a nice little ding-dong battle. Comparative, lukewarmish 2-1 favorite over 7-2 Saddle Up Jesse here. Evidencius runs third. I like Saddle Up Jesse, and Saddle Up Jesse, the Brittany Russell runner, is right there. This is a ding-dong battle. And Sheldon Russell said afterwards on the 6, he had the lead there and just couldn't push on by. And he wondered if maybe he moved a little too soon. Just as an observer, I will trust him. He was speculating that as the rider, but as a bettor, I like the move, and I thought he was going to zip by at the top of the stretch. I'm just wondering, perhaps Comparative was a little bit better. Comparative coming off an optional claiming win. That was a comeback, hadn't been seen since a poor performance in the Pimlico's Black Eyed Susan back in May, so laid off from May until November, the winner comparative there. And the comeback was a nice win. So now it's followed that up with a win in the ladies. And again, talented little runner perhaps going forward now in the 4-year-old season for Brad Cox and Godolphin. But no shame for Saddle Up Jessie. Quick turnaround, came back off a December 23rd stakes win in Laurel for Brittany Russell, where she had the great season down in Laurel. Came in with a 2-race win streak, including that little stakes race last time, and ran very well. Again, top of the stretch, you thought, I'm going to go on by, and just could not sustain that enough, and comparative comes back. But 2 nice performances, I thought. And she winds up with an 89 buyer. So solid little buyer for comparative in the ladies at Aqueduct yesterday. And again, Brad Cox sweeping the stakes action down in New York yesterday. All right, let's shift our attention over to Gulfstream. 3 nice stakes. Well, 3 stakes yesterday. A couple of them, I think, kind of fell apart a little bit. Limehouse, after scratches, you wound up with only 4. But nice little field to kick off the stakes action yesterday in the Ginger Brew. They were going a mile on the turf for the 3-year-old fillies. I liked Waskesiu, and I don't think that's how Pete Aiello pronounced it, because I was curious to see. And now I've forgotten what he was going with. But that horse, I was surprised yesterday, wound up the 9-5 favorite. The number 6 horse, again, Wakesiu. Bill Mott trainee, started twice at Saratoga on the dirt, and then had a little bit of a layoff and came back mid-November on the turf going long at Aqueduct and won that. Off of that, I put the horse on top, but I was a little bit surprised that the betting public also went in that direction. I guess very similar thinking to me. So Wakesiu, stepping from Maiden Company into a stakes race down at Gulfstream, went off as the 9-5 favorite. She's the number 6 horse. She's going to wind up 3rd in here. It's going to be Ozara, the winner, and Life's Inaudible, the number 12, second. Ozaria is the number 4. As you can see, kind of opens things up. Life's Inaudible makes a great late run here. I thought the 6, Wakesiu, was going to hold second, but with a head bob, and it does wind up to be a head margin between 2nd and 3rd. Second goes to Life's Inaudible. But Ozara, and when I talked about this race yesterday on OTB Live, I, again, was surprised that the betting public went with that Mott horse stepping out of Maiden Company. I was surprised they made that horse the favorite, because Ozara, who you wound up $8, a 3-to-1, a straight 3-to-1, you wound up with $8 on that horse, who was a Christophe Clement runner who already had stakes experience. This one had broken the maiden in the debut at Saratoga, and then 3 straight stakes tries, including out of the maiden breaker. They went to the Natalma at Woodbine, which if you win that, then you head to the Breeders' Cup. And I just liked that they came out of the maiden breaker at Saratoga and said, let's try the Grade 1 Natalma up at Woodbine. They ran 4th in there, but then came back down to New York, tried the Chelsea Flower, ran 2nd, and won the Wait a While. So this was a horse with not only stakes experience, but was a stakes winner at Aqueduct, or at Gulfstream. The Chelsea Flower was at Aqueduct, then went down to Gulfstream for the Wait a While. So not only a stakes winner, but a stakes winner over the track. So I was kind of surprised that one, they let that one get away as that second choice. I mean, it was right there, but that the Bill Mott runner had taken the action. So Zara gets it done. Couple of stakes wins now on the resume. This is going to be a nice little 3-year-old turf filly for Christophe Clement and company. Life's Inaudible, good late run for that one. That was a Pletcher Rapoli runner coming out of the try in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. And with that late run, it was a little too late. By that time, the winner had already opened up a little bit. But it was a good late run and a good gutsy second to get the head bob. So I think Pletcher and Rapoli have a nice little 3-year-old turf filly, as does Bill Mott with Wakesiu. Again, that one was coming out of a maiden race and stepping right on the maiden breaker in the stakes company. So given the third place finish and a just miss second third place finish, that was a good performance for that one as well. So top three certainly worth watching going forward in that subdivision of the 3-year-old fillies on the turf. All right, the Limehouse. This one, 3-year-olds sprinting 6, and as I say, it fell apart a little bit with some late scratches. I liked Valiant Force. That one was a late scratch. Or Flash was a late scratch. So at the gate, there was some things going on, and we wound up with a little bit of a disappointing field of 4 in here. So not much to say, but Ship to Shore gets it done. The number 3 horse. This is again, a fairly lightly raced runner. Started the career at Monmouth, broke the maiden in the career debut, and then has been in stakes races ever since and hasn't shown a whole lot. Was making a turf to dirt move, was cutting back, took the lead, and just really never looked back here. Again, in the scratch reduced shortened field of only 4, Louis the Sun King second, and Hermosa Hambre third in here. After scratches, I wasn't left with much. I had Louis the Sun King on a move up, and that one was a well-beaten second, well ahead of the third. But again, in the scratch-reduced field, going forward, I'm not quite sure what to make of this bunch, given the way, the race was run and the situation with getting scratched down. The stakes finale yesterday at Gulfstream, my favorite subdivision, the 3-year-olds on the turf, and this kind of kicks things off. And I always say what I like about it is they start at the beginning of the year and they continue. We had a 3-year. It was at Gulfstream. The Tropical Park Derby. We had just a couple of weeks ago. We had 3-year-olds on the turf, kind of winding up the year as well. And virtually every venue has a race like this, and typically they're kind of fun and competitive. This one again kind of scratched down a little bit disappointingly because it was a decent field of 10 to start out with, but after scratches we wound up with only a field of 6. And after scratches, I was only left with Agate Road, the Pletcher runner from Mike Rapoli and Company. Another one coming out of Breeders' Cup, tried the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, and had run 5th, had won the Pilgrim before that. So Agate Road, not surprisingly with these connections in the record, was the 1-2 favorite, but it winds up to be Takayo winning, a horse the most experienced with coming in with 10 starts, was the most experienced in the field. You can see here, number 4 horse had the lead all the way around and just does not really get challenged. Agate Road does make a late run. It's just too late. So winds up a well-beaten second. Well, a notably beaten second. It was daylight, length and a half on the chart, but a length and a half ahead of third for Agate Road. So again, it's one of those where I think both of the top 2. Just given the way the race was run on the front end, won all the way around, I'm not quite sure what to make it Takayo. And I did not see a buyer for this one, but it come in with a lifetime best of 69. Agate Road had a lifetime best of 81. Going forward, if somebody said to me, you can have either of these horses, I'd take Agate Road, I think. And again, in this subdivision, I like it. I think it's a lot of fun to follow throughout the year. I think the one that will prove out to be a little more talented going forward is Agate Road. But hats off to the Takayo folks. Went off as the second longest price on the board, paid $29 and change. And with Agate Road completing the exact $70 exact if you used the price on top. But again, and it wasn't like the horse was totally unhavable, if that's a word. Had won a little optional claimer at Laurel 2 starts back. On the numbers, though, seemed a little slower than certainly Agate Road, but was probably comparable to the rest of the field, actually, particularly after the scratches. I scratched down. I lost 3 of mine to scratches. So there were some other horses that, to me, seemed far more logical than Takayo, but most of them scratched. So again, you could have looked at that one and compared to the rest of the field, to the place horse, Agate Road, I would have had a hard time going with DeCaio. But the rest of the field, you could have made the case off of that nice win two back at Laurel. So, you looked up at the board, saw the 13-1, and thought, I'll take a shot. You could have made a little something there. And I am not red boarding because I did not do that, but I'm just saying, reverse engineering, you could have made that case as the horse was, again, comparable to pretty much the rest of the field. All right, let's also go down to Oaklawn. They had a nice little stake yesterday. The Pippin, it's for the fillies and mares going a mile and a 16th. We had talked, 2 or 3 weeks ago with Kenny McPeak, and when we talked to him, we got a little update on Butterbean, who had won on December 9th, the Mistletoe, the first weekend of the meet, I'm pretty sure, at Oaklawn. At 11-1, he told us his daughters had named the horse, and he was expecting to kind of go on this series, keep going this series in Arkansas. In that Mistletoe, I had liked Misty Vale, and in that race, Butterbean just edged Misty Vale. They faced off again yesterday, and it does turn out to be Misty Vale getting it done. Misty Vale is going to be the number 2 horse here. Mike Maker trainee. It will wind up to be a length. Ice Orchid second, just a smidge over number 3, Butterbean. So Butterbean runs well again. Just the horse that I thought was logical last time turned out to be logical yesterday at 3-1. Ice Orchid was actually the favorite yesterday, who had run third in that Mistletoe last time. So again, it was the top 3 finishers from the prior race in this series down at Oaklawn, going 1, 2, 3 again, but in juggled up order. Ice Orchid in that Mistletoe was actually the 5-2 favorite there. Betting public jumped on her again. She winds up second. Butterbean and Misty Vale were both the same, 3.10 to 1. And I don't have the pools here to know who technically was the second choice, but they were both taking about the same action from the betting public. Misty Vale gets it done. Kind of interesting follow-up article, and they said they haven't changed their plans. Misty Vale is entered in January Keeneland auction, which kicks off, I think, tomorrow. So you would have to think that had a little more value to her page. And now I'm going to be interested to see when she goes through the ring what she attracts, because that's nice to get a little stakes win on the resume heading off to the auction ring. And again, the connection said, nope, we're not changing our plans. We have the van. The van is all set to go, and she'll hop on the van and head up to Kentucky for the sale. Wanted to look at one more race from yesterday because, as I said earlier, we're looking at this time of year, certainly 3-year-olds as the Derby/Triple Crown Trail kicks off. And out at Santa Anita, it was the Grade 2 San Vicente, a couple $100,000, 7 furlongs the trip. And at 2-5, no surprise, Muth gets it done. Coming out of a second place finish behind Fierceness in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, had won the American Pharoah before that. Couple of wins, couple of seconds, and 4 starts for the Baffert trainee. And obviously, off of that record, took all the action at 2-5 and lived up to it. Chart margin here, just under 3 lengths. Pilot, the number 4, second. Slider, third. So it does wind up to be a Bob Baffert exacta. And as I said, Muth with the very good record. Slider for Bob Baffert. Kind of interesting. Reminds me of Speedboat Beach a little bit. First couple of starts of the career, nice dirt starts at Del Mar, and second in debut. And I'm talking about Slider now, the second place finisher there. Second debut and won the second start, sprinting on the dirt at Del Mar. Then they go over to Santa Anita, win the Speakeasy on the grass, and then they try the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf and disappointing there a little bit, running 9th. But they get back to the dirt yesterday, running okay second. So Slider may be one to watch as well, who now on dirt, a win and 2 seconds, including a nice little graded stakes race second. And as I say, it has a little ring to that Speedboat Beach record where there was a turf and dirt kind of thing going on, and showed success both surfaces. So we'll see what the game plan will be going forward for Slider. But Muth, and I will note, I saw 91 buyers. So no knock there. Here we are, January of the 3-year-old season. Nice solid 91. That was not a lifetime best buyer, however. He did that in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile back in November, where he got a 95, running second, again, to Fierceness. But again, those are solid numbers, again, this time of year for a 3-year-old. So Muth, again, a Bob Baffert horse. We will see with the Baffert situation in the Kentucky Derby, his 3-year-olds at this time of year, you're always scratching your chin a little bit, what the game plan will be going forward, whether they'll pick their spots and say, Kentucky Derby, or whether they'll find another trainer to head to Kentucky. So we'll keep our eyes on Muth going forward, but certainly has Triple Crown potential. Whether it will be inclusive of the Derby or not, again, we shall see. All right, we'll take a break now, and when we come back again, the Eclipse Award finalists were announced yesterday, so we'll take a look at those. We talked about Mike McAdam and I from the Daily Gazette talked about our ballots yesterday, and as I said earlier, kind of played out the way we thought as far as the finalists. We won't know the winners for a few weeks, but we'll go over the finalists that were announced yesterday right around lunchtime. All of that right after this. Stay tuned.
And they're off in the Pegasus World Cup. They're off in the Fountain of Youth Stakes. And they're off in the Curlin Florida Derby. Forte wins. White Aborio almost home.
And Nyquist is still unbeaten. Orb and John Velasquez have won the Florida Derby.
Barbaro wins.
And there you have it. Northern Dancer will be the winner of the Florida Derby.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Welcome back. Seth Merrow in the studio on a Sunday morning. And again, if you're headed out, just going from my experience driving in, playing a little extra time this morning. And it seems like, looking at the TV before I left this morning, this snow will continue in some fashion late afternoon and maybe even a little lighter through the early evening, which means, again, from my drive this morning, I don't think it was as bad as might have been expected. But it is still snowing. So the plows are keeping the roads fairly clean, but then they get snowed on a little bit. So you have that little bit of snow. So again, a little extra time if you're headed out this morning or into the afternoon. All right. Again, Mike McAdam and I from the Gazette went over our Eclipse ballots yesterday. And about an hour later, the finalists were announced. I think we were right in the ballpark. Again, we were announcing who we had on top and then the order we had. And for the most part, our three kind of matched up nicely. Now, will our top pick match up with the top pick when those are announced? That has yet to be determined. Although I think, again, we mentioned some kind of slam dunk categories that I think you can kind of rely on. But we will all know on January 25th at 7:30, it will kick off down in Florida. We'll have the announcement. And the finalist and the winner for Horse of the Year get announced that night. So there isn't a finalist list for Horse of the Year, but all the other categories. The 2-year-old male, Fierceness, Locked Muth. That's right in line with the 3 I had, and I think this is one of the slam dunk categories. I think Fierceness, just off the record. It's a quirky record, but the debut win combined with the win in the Breeders' Cup, I would have to think will be enough to get him the vote. In those bookend, an absolute head scratcher. But again, that he validated the first start with the win in the Breeders' Cup, I think make him pretty logical. On the 2-year-old filly side of things, Candied, Hard to Justify, and Just FYI. Again, the 3 I had on my ballot, and I think it's a kind of a slam dunk in here with Just FYI and her win in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to run the record to 3 for 3. Also notable that she is trained by Bill Mott. That'll come up in the human categories. 3-year-old Arcangelo, Auguste Rodin, and Mage. I think Arcangelo is another one of the slam dunks. Not that Arcangelo had a super standout year or it was a super standout 3-year-old crop. I just think it's hard to make a case for others. You have Arcangelo with the Belmont and the Travers. I think that's enough. I was a little bit different underneath because, again, the 3-year-old season I don't think had any particular stellar performers. And so once I got past Arcangelo, I went with Arabian Night Program Trading. Turns out to be Auguste Rodin and Mage. And you get it. It's the Derby winner. You can make the argument there, and also, you have a winner of a Breeders' Cup race. So I get where the voters went in that fashion. I should note, and I mentioned it yesterday, as far as voting, the finalists are decided. Everybody on their ballot fills out top pick, second pick, third pick, and it winds up to be a 10-5-1 point system to determine finalists. But again, and mentioned it yesterday, for folks who aren't familiar, the actual Eclipse winners are only decided by the first place votes. So the ballots 1, 2, 3 just play into a list of final. And I assume they do it that way in case there's ever a year where there's a huge standout and it's virtually a unanimous decision. Then how would you decide who the finalists are? So I think that's why they do the system the way they do it. It's a little bit quirky, but again, the actual winners are only determined by the first place votes. 3-year-old filly, Mage, Pretty Mischievous and randomized. Again, I was kind of right there. I went Pretty Mischievous, randomized, and Zagera. But another one, I'm going to be interested to see how it shakes out. I said that yesterday. I had Pretty Mischievous on top, but I certainly think you can make the case for randomized. But Pretty Mischievous, to me, you tossed in certainly the Kentucky Oaks stands out. The Acorn is another grade 1. And on the resume, Pretty Mischievous gets the win, credit for the win in the test. But again, that was the ill-fated Maple Leaf Mel race. And so I didn't know how do I factor that in? But for me, the Acorn and the Kentucky Oaks were probably kind of enough. But randomized, I think, has a resume that's going to be interesting as well. But as I say, played out, as far as the finalists, fairly logically. Older dirt male, again, logical. Cody's Wish, Elite Power, White Abario. And to me, Cody's Wish just had the solid campaign, but also a fun story. And do you factor in the story to that? There are no rules to say no, so we'll see where the betting public, or not the betting, but where the voting goes in that. But again, as I say, just perfectly logical as far as the list of finalists. Same scenario, the older dirt female, Clariere, Goodnight Olive, and Idiomatic. And I'm just looking. I had a Dare Manor in there rather than Goodnight Olive, but I have no arguments with Goodnight Olive. again, I had it down in the third spot, which just plays into the finalists. But I think Idiomatic is the clear winner. Another one in the quote unquote slam dunk category. And I'm kind of glad to see Clariere get it. I've liked her throughout the career. And, we mentioned yesterday there was a point in the stretch in the Breeders' Cup where I thought she was going to win the distaff and winds up fourth in there, but ran very, very well. In the male sprinter category, I went Elite Power Gunite and the Chosen Vron. The Chosen Vron's just a really good Calbred, and I kind of wanted to recognize that and that I use that a little bit in those underneath spots. And if other voters are of similar mind, maybe a lesser known group of people will get recognized a little bit. That's not how it plays. Obviously the Chosen Vron, but again, I'm not surprised, and I don't really have any arguments with the contenders here. Cody's Wish, Elite Power Gunite, and folks may say, how can you not use Cody's Wish? You had him as the older dirt male. I'm a little iffy. If that's what it takes to parse things out, I'll do it. But as far as mile races being considered sprints, to me, it's those are kind of a hybrid, and they're in between races. And I had Cody's Wish getting his due as older dirt male, and then later on as well as Horse of the Year. So as far as the sprinter, I put Elite Power on top, and I think even though Cody's Wish, I was going to say I think Elite Power will get it, but I suppose it'll be interesting to see, because if other people don't parse out those mile races the way I do, then Cody's Wish maybe. I mean, if you have Cody's Wish as your older dirt male and like me, Horse of the Year, maybe you feel like you have to, if you consider him a sprinter, maybe you have to put him on top. So maybe that becomes a little more of an interesting category than I was considering. Female sprinter, Good Night Olive, Echo Zulu, Maple Leaf Mel. I was right there as well. I had Good Night Olive on top with the Breeders' Cup win, and I think that will get her the victory. But again, also the other two logical on the list of finalists. Male turf, Auguste Rodin, Master of the Season, Up to the Mark. I went Up to the Mark, Master of the Seas, and I used Casa Creed. I think Casa Creed had a really good year. I liked that they went up to Saratoga and they were aiming for a little later in the meet, but the horse is kind of knocking down the stall, so they get the win up there in that race and then go on to win again. And just fun career, and they've taken some shots with them, and so I wanted to recognize Casa Creed. So I put him on my ballot, but again, I don't really have any argument with the way it came up as far as finalists. I think Up to the Mark gets it. We'll see how it plays out because a lot of people do give plenty of credit to the Breeders' Cup, and so Auguste Rodin, does that one wind up getting recognized, or with the win in the Breeders' Cup Mile, Master of the Seas? So as I say, I think on the totality of the year, to me, Up to the Mark deserves it. I wouldn't name that one on my slam dunk list, however. Another category I'll be interested in. And the category that, just listening to people over the last few days and talking with Mike McAdam yesterday, certainly, the one that really stumped voters was female turf, and I kind of whiffed. I put Warlike Goddess on top, and I knew that was kind of a stretch. But the win in the Turf Classic against the boys, I thought was convincing. And then, I gave him some credit. We had seventh, but I gave him credit for trying the boys in the Breeders' Cup Turf. So I went in that direction, not with a lot of conviction, though, in a category that, again, was tough this year. And so my top pick does not even make the finalist list. It's In Italian, Inspiral, and Maj. Inspiral, certainly with the win in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, I would say is maybe the logical direction that this will end up in. And I said it yesterday, I just am never enamored with voting for the Europeans who come over and win one race. And so I tend to look in other directions. But there are years where even I, with that thought, have gone towards the one win in the United States because there weren't other options. And that may be this year. It was a category that was a little open. So as I say, I kind of whiffed in there, but now I'm definitely intrigued to see how it plays out on January 25th and who winds up to be the winner. Female turf. Steeplechase side, we'll see if our friends Sean Clancy and Marshall Graham can wind up. Steeplechase, I will say, and I vote, and it always kind of infuriates me when the tallies come out and a bunch of people haven't voted for Steeplechase. It's not. This isn't a totally different sport. They're all out there racing. You can handicap up at Saratoga. You can bet some of the other venues. You can bet as well. And so, it's more cut and dried is not the right word, but it's more understandable than I think people give it credit. I mean, it's just not that difficult. So I like steeplechase racing up at Saratoga. It's part of the landscape, and so I definitely cast a vote. Although this was also a tough category. Nobody really. They have, I think, 3 grade 1s during the year. The Grand National, the Lonesome Glory, and the Shepherd, Jonathan Shepherd, up at Saratoga. And the Smithwick, too. Yeah, as I'm looking at the PP. So there's at least 4. And nobody really strung any together. But Awaken won the Jonathan Shepherd towards the end of the meet at Saratoga. Had a decent little record on the season otherwise. And again, that one is owned by Riverdee Stable and 10 Strike Racing. And again, that's Sean Clancy and Marshall Graham. So be kind of fun to see if those guys walk up to the podium and accept an Eclipse award, because they're both guys we are familiar with and have had on the show many, many times. I mentioned some folks don't vote for steeplechase. The total number of voters, there are 250 eligible voters. And this year, 219 took part in the voting, 88%. And it consists of voters, racetrack member, NTRA member, racetrack racing officials, Equibase field personnel. I'm a member because of the National Turf Writers and Broadcasters Association. I'm a member of that. We get a vote, and folks at the Daily Racing Forum. That makes up your field of voters. And again, had 88% participation this year. Over on the human side of things, as far as owner and breeder, I think Godolphin just had a really spectacular year. If you parse these out and as voters, you get sent all this information. Money won, wins overall, graded stakes races, grade 1 wins. I think Godolphin probably has an edge in both the owner and the breeder category. Nice to see Seth Klarman get at least recognized as a finalist. He always is a big participant in New York racing, so that's nice to see. On the trainer side of things, again, when we talked about this yesterday, going to be very interested to see how the trainer shakes out. I went Bill Mott on top, Brad Cox, and then I had Linda Rice third, again, just to recognize the spectacular year in New York that she had. But I have no argument with Chad Brown being a finalist. Brad Cox has the overall numbers, and I went back and forth, Brad Cox and Bill Mott, and I eventually put Bill Mott on top. Bill Mott, on my ballot has 3 champions, just FYI, Cody's Wish and Elite Power, and Horse of the Year, because I went with Cody's Wish. Now, I debated Horse of the Year, Idiomatic, who had the great January to November year, and if I'd gone in her direction, I probably would have put Brad Cox on top. Brad Cox, and I feel bad, like Brad, he's great to us, he's on the show, and he had an Eclipse-worthy year. But, boy, Bill Mott had a really good year, too. So I just slightly went for Bill Mott over Brad Cox. And from hearing people talk, I think there's a lot of that sentiment. So I'm going to be interested to see how it shakes out when the actual winners are announced. Jockey category, again, I think this is a slam dunk category, Irod Ortiz. It might have been a little more intriguing, and I will note it's disappointing, and a number of people have noted it, that Javier Castellano didn't make the list as a finalist. It seems like people were talking about him quite a bit from about Saratoga on. Wins the Travers and adds another Travers to his resume, won the Belmont, won the Derby, and just had a really, really good year. And with those stakes wins and notable, it seemed like Castellano was getting a push for folks to really consider him. As I was driving in this morning, I started thinking, was that more of a New York kind? But not really, because he won the Derby, won the Belmont. Those are national. The Travers on the racing scene is kind of international or national. But I was surprised that he didn't get recognized. A little bit disappointed. And it seems like other people as well. All of that said, and I looked at the ballot and considered Javier Castellano and had him as one of my finalists, but you just could not ignore the Irod Ortiz juggernaut. Wins, money earned, stakes wins, grade ones, and I think Irod is going to kind of run away with it. An apprentice jockey. If it was me, I would rewrite the rules. It's just a funny thing because once a jockey loses the apprentice allowance, that's the end of what you can consider. So some jockeys, you're just kind of considering a portion of the year. It makes it kind of an apples and oranges thing. It looks like Concepcion had a pretty good year and probably gets it. Torres, I think, was competitive. Vivis, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, also had a nice little year. We'll see how it shakes out. But again, I would like to see maybe change the rules, or I'd be willing to listen if somebody else had an idea. But consider from the day they lose their apprentice, go back a year. And then because under the current rules, apprentices can actually get a couple of shots at the award. They can have part of their apprentice in 1 year and part in the next year. So let's just all go here. The apprenticeship ends here. We'll go back. And if you look back over the years, pull up, I'm sure there's a Wikipedia page for Apprentice Eclipse Award. There's been a number of very notables who did. In fact, I think, now that I think about it, I think Wesley Ward, as a jockey, I think he was an Apprentice Eclipse Award winner, I think. You look at him now, you think, really? But he was a jock, and a good one. On the media side of things, which we're always interested in, and this year some folks we know and are friendly with, those winners have already been announced. So just a little tip of the cap to the folks that won. Live programming, I would like to maybe change the rules for some of these awards as well, because live programming, I mean, it's always like NBC or one of the networks. Hey, you got the Derby or the Breeders. It's I don't know. It seems I mean, they did a great job. Congratulations. I'm not knocking that they did a good job. They did, but it just seems like it's always going to be, you're going to point at one or two contenders that are going to be the likely winners, and they'll wind up that way as well. But over on the writing side, feature commentary, Tim Layden, guy originally from this area, went on to national prominence and writing for NBCSports.com, had a follow-up to the unfortunate incident with Maple Leaf Mel. Same scenario with Sean Clancy. Saratoga special. Regulars with us up at Saratoga. Sean, his brother Joe, and Tom Law from the special are on with us every week. And Sean Clancy also wrote about the test, Maple Leaf Mel, and won an Eclipse Award for that. It's unfortunate. They both did a great job and recognized what was obviously a notable story. If something like that winds up to, be what we're recognizing, but it was notable, certainly. And again, congratulations to Sean and Tim Layden. As I say, Tim, originally from this area, wrote for local newspapers, and Sean with the Saratoga special up here every summer. has been for years and years. So congratulations there. Feature television programming, Woodbine was secretary at the last race. Congratulations to them. On the multimedia side of things, the TDN Writers Room podcast wins. They do a nice job there. Photography, Carolyn Semenchik. Trading Horse Paint was the name of the photo, but it was a nice picture of Cody's Wish and National Treasure battling it out in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. It appeared on the press box back on November 4th. And you can catch that picture if you go to the NTRA website, click on the news link at the top of the page, and then you will see latest news or something like press releases. You click on that, and they have an article, media Eclipse winners, and they link to the photo, so you can check that out as well. And again, those winners will be awarded their trophies along with the equine side of things on January 25th. The award ceremony happening down at Palm Beach, Florida. So again, we have a couple of weeks here before we find out the winners. And as I noted, the finalists for Horse of the Year get announced that night. So the finalist and obviously the winner all get announced that night as well. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, moment of the year. I'll give you the list there. I always find the moment of the year funny because this is a moment. How do you define moment? But we'll take a quick look before we wrap up today at the NTRA moment of the year. And you get to vote. That, I think, is announced Eclipse Award night as well. And I think you have a little over a week or so to vote. But we'll take a look at that list right after this. So stay tuned.
Sometimes it pays to go with the flow, to check your worries at the door, to reconnect with your crew, to follow the thrills and the flavor, to roll with it and see where it takes you, to enjoy every minute to its fullest, and to dance like there's no tomorrow. You can do that here at Rivers Casino and Resort Schenectady, where the good times flow.
Gulfstream Park's championship meet brings world-class thoroughbred racing to South Florida each winter, and it's a prime reason to offer the best turf racing possible. Having the best surfaces is the key to offering a superior racing product. We are committed to attracting the world's best horses, trainers, and jockeys to run over our exceptional course. Gulfstream Park's new turf course will be unveiled this December.
Capital OTB is now streaming live on Roku. The RTN Racing channel on Roku lets you watch OTB TV live through your Roku device or your Amazon Fire Stick, rather than being limited to computers and mobile devices, which means you can now watch OTB live wherever you are. Simply open Roku, scroll to find the RTN channel, then click on OTB TV. OTB TV on Roku. Try it now. Welcome back to Racing Across America. Yeah, I have the list here. Every year they have the NTRA Moment of the Year. And you can vote as well. You can go to the NTRA site and cast a ballot until, I believe, the 16th. January 16th. And every year I've it's a long list, and there are plenty that are legitimate moments. There's and I'll go through the list. Frankie Dettori returns to California and had a successful year at Santa Anita. You can vote for that. How is that a moment? That is not a moment. Big Red Tour. Secretariat Larger Than Life, the traveling tour, celebrates the 50th anniversary of Secretariat's record-setting and historic Triple Crown sweep. How, again, it's a moment. The traveling tour, that doesn't, to me, that's not defined as a moment. Irod wins 7 consecutive races at Gulfstream back on February 3rd. That's in the ballpark, because I suppose you could count the moment he crossed the line for the 7th win as being there. That, again, Mage's Derby is won, National Treasure's Preakness, and Archangelo's Belmont, and Archangelo's Travers. And those are all, I think, legitimately in the moment category. Cody's Wish winning the Breeders' Cup. Again, qualifies for me. Goodnight Olive repeating in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. White of Barrio winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. So again, those race, that to me is a moment. He crosses the finish line. The fans are all there. Is that moment of elation that I think counts. Elite Power winning the Breeders' Cup Sprint again. And then the list ends with a couple that I think are notable and worthy of recognition, but a moment. Linda Rice topping the record for most wins in a year by a trainer in New York, and Brittany Russell becoming the first female trainer to win the national title down in win the annual title down in Maryland. And as I said, they are both worthy of recognition. I'm not sure they are moments, however. But you define moment how you would like to, and if you'd like to vote, again, if we could show the address there. It's NTRA/Eclipse Awards /2023 Moment of the Year. And I'm virtually certain if you go to Google and type in NTRA Moment of the Year, you'll be able to find the page. And over a week to make a vote if you are so inclined. And as I say, I believe that will also be announced on Eclipse Award evening on January 25th. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for this edition of Racing Across America. We made it. Yesterday, we weren't quite sure what the predicted snow, but we're in, and we are in for the duration here. Again, I haven't heard anything. I will ask Dan in the control room, any cancellation? Everything sounds good so far. So, again, in New York, there is a carryover in the Pick Six, $29,000 Pick Six carryover. Here at the Clubhouse Racebook, again, if you plan to come, we'd love to have you. It's an NFL Sunday. Just drive safely, drive slowly. All the football action as we wind up the season, and all the racing action as well here at the Clubhouse Racebook this afternoon. Grab a little lunch at Fredella's if you'd like. 7-Eleven, Central Avenue in Albany. I'll also give you a little head start on some of the promos. We have some nice promos coming up throughout January. But this week on Friday, the Bounty Bet will return. It'll be the late pick 5 at Aqueduct. So that kicks back off on Friday afternoon. Friday afternoon also, stop by the Racebook. It's the prize wheel. You can come on down. We'll randomly select folks throughout the afternoon to spin the prize wheel, maybe win a little extra something. That's Friday at the Racebook. Saturday at the Racebook, it's a $100 Win-A-Bet challenge right here at the Racebook. Friday and Saturday coming up later this week, 7-Eleven, Central Avenue in Albany. Seth Merrow in the studio, wrapping it up for a Sunday morning Racing Across America. We'll come back in just about an hour or so to kick things off OTB Live on a Sunday afternoon. And again, I'm going to look at a little Aqueduct today, a little Gulfstream, and I also did some Oaklawn for today as well. So it should be a fun Sunday afternoon. Hopefully, you'll be back with us then. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your morning. Fire up, print up those PPs, start marking them up, because we'll be back in, as I say, just about an hour or so, OTB Live for Sunday afternoon. See you then.
We'd like to thank Gulfstream Park for their sponsorship of this program and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Gulfstream Park, the championship meet, running now through Florida Derby weekend, March 31st.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.